32nd anniversary of the infamous Roe v. Wade decision, 1973. Since then, 55 million, more than 55 million babies have been aborted. That's 55 million human lives that have been executed. Just despicable. You have the annual March for Life. They're expecting about 500,000 pro-lifers in Washington, D.C. today in the March for Life. Yet, look at the news media. It's as though nothing is even going on. Oh, tomorrow there'll be some brief mention about, this march that happened in Washington. But can anybody out there, can you think of one event, any kind of event, for any reason whatsoever, where you get 500,000 people in Washington, D.C., and it's not an above-the-fold news story, the biggest #1 news story going on in America? Just incredible. Well, anyway, it is interesting to see how the New York Times reports on the issue of the March for Life. They say, quote, "The start of 2015 finds no let-up in the attack on women's constitutionally protected right to make her own childbearing decisions." And they weren't even reporting on the march. They were just reporting on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and the pro-life forces that are stepping up their game. But anyway, this moves us then to the U.S. House of Representatives. As you know, Republicans took control of the Senate and they widened their control of the House. And the Republican-controlled House had planned on voting for the ban on abortions after 20 weeks. They planned on voting on this today. It theoretically should have had no problem passing the House, and then it's a matter of getting it over to the Senate. Banning abortions after 20 weeks is a very, very reasonable thing to do. As you folks know, listening to this show, 95% of every nation on planet Earth bans abortion after 20 weeks. There's only 4 nations out of 196 nations on the entire planet that allow abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. And there's not one European Union nation that allows abortion past 28 weeks. Only 4 of them allow it past 18 weeks. And the average in the European Union of those 28 nations, the liberal European Union, the average nation bans abortion after 13.4 weeks. So you can see why banning abortion after 20 weeks is not a radical thing. So why did the U.S. House Republicans delay and scrap their plans to vote on this ban? Here's why. Here's what happened. There were a couple of provisions in there that caused some controversy and some concern among some Republican women. Now, here's the deal. The ban on abortion after 20 weeks, it makes an exception for rape and incest. Now, you folks know I don't support a rape and incest exception at all. But the Republicans felt like, all right, to get this thing to pass, we got to get at least an exception in there for rape and incest. Okay. So you can get abortions after 20 weeks for rape and incest. However, what the House Bill 36 says is that the only rape and incest victims who can get an abortion after 20 weeks are those who reported the rape or the incest to the authorities. And this caused some Republican women to say, no, I can't support that because you shouldn't put any kind of restrictions at all on rape or incest victims. Now, I want to make sure everybody understands. This bill, it says if you are a rape victim or an incest victim, you can get an abortion any time up to 20 weeks. And after 20 weeks, if you're a rape or incest victim, you can still get an abortion. While nobody else could, you could still get an abortion if you decide you want to. However, only if you reported the rape or the incest to the authorities when it happened. As long as you reported it then, so a woman gets raped, she reports the rape to the police, she decides not to get an abortion, suddenly she's 4, 5, 6 months pregnant, and then she decides she wants to get an abortion after all. As long as she can show, yes, I did in fact report this to the police, then she's still allowed to get an abortion. Now, the purpose of this, I understand what the thinking was among the pro-life Republicans to put this in there, is it protects against some women just basically lying and claiming that they were raped or claiming that they were a victim of incest when they really weren't, just so that they can get themselves an abortion after 20 weeks. This particular provision of this bill protects against women being able to do that. However, what the more liberal Republican women are saying is, we don't want to put any restrictions on a rape or incest victim at all. So if some rape or incest victim, if they decided to get an abortion and it was after 20 weeks, so what if they didn't report it to the police? They should still be allowed to get that abortion. And then they point out the fact that a lot of women that are raped or are victims of incest never end up reporting it to the authorities because of shame or fear or whatever the case may be. And so there are a lot of legitimate rape victims who didn't report it to the police, and so now they, if they're going to get an abortion, they would have to get it inside of 20 weeks. Now, I think this is reasonable to have that provision in there. But the bottom line, you had a little bit of a revolt in the Republican Party. You had some not so strong pro-life Republicans, including some women, that said, no, we can't go with this. And so they were unwilling to vote for this ban on abortion after 20 weeks with that rape provision. The more strongly pro-life Republicans stuck to their gun and said, no, we're not going to remove that provision because we don't want we don't want women who weren't really raped to get an abortion after 30 weeks and lie and basically claim that they were raped just as an excuse to get an abortion. So that's the reason that this is at this point being delayed. Now, my feeling on this, and I'm not saying that I'm right, I don't know, because I'm trying to process this. Number one, I feel that those women and those more liberal Republicans who are refusing to vote for this bill as long as those provisions are in there, I think that they are wrong. I do believe that they are wrong. I think that this is a perfectly reasonable provision to have in this bill. However, I also believe that the more conservative Republicans are wrong for letting this entire bill die rather than at least getting it passed. So it seems to me, let's at least start with getting a ban on partial birth abortions passed. Post 20-week abortions passed. Let's just do a ban on that, because by putting in these provisions, even though I think they're reasonable provisions, by putting them in, you know what it does? It gives ammunition to the Democrats to say, look, those Republicans are being insensitive to rape victims. They're telling a woman who's a victim of rape, you have to prove you called the police. It makes it look like Republicans are placing additional restrictions on rape victims, therefore being insensitive to rape victims. It gives ammunition to the Democrats. And so I guess I feel like, while yes, this is a reasonable provision to put in, it's politically stupid. And so therefore, I think that the Republicans should not have put that provision in there. Go ahead and just put forward a bill that's a straight ban on abortion after 20 weeks. Go ahead and put your rape and incest exception in there. Don't put special provisions on the rape and incest provision. Let it pass in the House, then send it over to the Senate and dare the Senate Democrats to filibuster that, because they won't have the, oh, you're being insensitive to rape victims card to play. If the Republicans just say, hey, we took out that provision, so rape and incest victims, they can go ahead and get an abortion if they want to, up to 9 months. Okay, then what you do is you put the Democrats on the defensive, because now they have to justify filibustering a ban on abortion after 20 weeks. And they don't get to bring up the rape card. Let alone President Obama, same thing. So this is a case where I genuinely believe that the pro-life purists in the Republican Party, while it's reasonable what their expectations are, they unfortunately put themselves on the defense and gave leverage to the Democrats and the liberals and those Republicans who are softer on abortion. You gave them leverage instead of giving yourself leverage and putting them on the defensive. And so therefore I think they were politically misguided in this. And that's how I look at it. Now there is another abortion restriction that they are planning on voting on today, and it's the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act. What is that? We'll talk about that next here on the Bob Dutko Show.